Free-to-play players have a lot of struggles. It's across the board, much more difficult for us to do quite a bit of things, but hey, we're here, we're fighting the fight, we're taking on the struggle day to day. Also, don't pay attention to speed tuning on this team, it's totally out of whack. If you know, don't judge me. Free-to-play players struggle, okay, perfect example. But one of the biggest things we struggle with is fusions. They can be really, really difficult, but they give you a guaranteed legendary. And for a brand new free-to-play account, that's huge. A lot of people were saying, for example, Ishiyama, most recent fusion that just happened, was not maybe the best champ for mid to late game, end game gamers, all those kinds of people. Okay, we're in a whole other league, the free-to-play newer players, all right? We struggle. This guy can make a big difference on account, just like many other fusions that come up. So today I'm going to go over how to prep for a fusion, but there's a lot of videos out there, okay? I'm going to get very, very specific about the exact amount of resources that you need for upcoming fusions, but I'm also going to go through and I'm going to show you the strategy that I use to prep for a fusion, even if you have no idea what fusion is coming up, if they haven't announced it yet, if we don't know what kind it's going to be. I'm going to go through, I'm going to show step by step exactly what I do to kind of get ready and think about doing it, especially in the mindset of a newer free-to-play player who really we have to plan, we have to strategically get the freaking prep ahead of time, otherwise we're going to fail, and I've definitely done that on new free-to-play accounts in the past. So let's rock it. If you are thinking about starting a brand new free-to-play account or just an account in general, I've got the perfect thing for you. Hold up, now it's time to click my link in the description below so that you can get yourself a free Karato, as well as 3 other insane epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Log out of Play and Play on PC and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get a free Karato right after signing up, as well as Anax, Uugo, and Mausoleum Mage as you progress through the game. Click on my link right now and let's crush this together. Hi, hello, my name is Fail, and we do a bit of different types of content here on this Raid Shadow Legends channel. Sometimes I hop into my free-to-play account, and we talk about how free-to-play players could really actually try to do this game. It's a freaking grind, especially in the beginning. And then sometimes I hop over on my main account. We do some fixing up in because she's a fixer-upper. We have a lot that we need to work with this account so that we can try to help it go from mid-game to more end-game where it really should be at this point, let's be freaking honest. So if you enjoy Raid Shadow Legends content, I would love it if you'd subscribe for more. Today's video though is about free-to-play players, especially beginning, early game. Those are on the struggle bus. Go ahead and hop on. We're gonna talk about how we can struggle just a tiny little bit less. I also want to put in here that I have been sick this last week, so my voice is a little bit iffy here and there. Please forgive me. Just deal with it like I am, and let's move the freak forward and continue on with this. In this video, we're going to be very, very analytical. I'm going to break everything down as compact and as an easy to follow way as possible. We might lose this. Hold on, I'm jumping in. Please don't die. We're going to get really analytical, and I'm going to go by step the exact resources that you need in order to complete a fusion. But also, I want to show a couple of quick tips and things that I do personally in order to prep for a fusion, especially as a free-to-play player. On my main account, I kind of just wait until all the videos come out from other content creators, until the schedule comes out for the fusion, and I go, okay, great, cool. Am I gonna do it? Am I not? Nowadays, I'm leaning more towards doing all of them, but cool, whatever. For the free-to-play account, though, we have to do some resource management. As you can see from the last fusion, which we did do on this account, I'm very low on shards. We have one freaking sacred. Those things are hard to get in the very beginning, and also all the specific, if we're gonna need potions, how many we're going to need, how many gems we should probably save up, etc., etc. Let's jump into it. All right, we're gonna get to all the resources that are needed in just a moment. I feel like there's a lot of videos about how many resources you need for fusion and whatnot, but I think there's a step that's really skipped. Let's talk about what to do when you don't know what fusion is coming up. Now, as of right now, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't checked this morning, but as of right now, there isn't a fusion. As of the time of this recording, there isn't a fusion that's been announced. The most recent one ended on the 19th, so that was exactly a week ago from when I'm recording this. Usually in between each fusion, there's about a week and a half to 2 weeks. It varies. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, sometimes shorter, depending on what other events Raid has coming at us in between, but that gives us a good idea of how long we have to prep and get ready, especially as newer players. I also want to note, whenever I'm getting ready for a brand new fusion, I go through and I look at the past ones, and there is actually a trend. So oftentimes what they do is they go traditional, hybrid, fragment. Traditional, hybrid, fragment. Traditional is where you have to go and get all the different champions. So I've pulled up a bunch of past traditional, fusion schedules that we have. It's a little bit small, sorry about that. Traditional is where you have to go and get 16 different rares, fuse them into 4 epics and then fuse those epics into the legendary. Whereas fragment is the one we just recently did with Ishiyama, where you have to go and get all of the fragments and then you can just summon the champion. Fragments are the easiest ones, so thankfully it made it a little bit easier for us in the new free-to-play account to get through that. Hybrid is a mix of both. A hybrid fusion is where you have to get 100 fragments for each of the different epic champions, 4 of them, and then you level those epics up and then turn it into whatever fusion champion is going on at the time. So with this, it's really helpful to look at the trend because 1, now we know we have about a week and a half to 2 weeks in between most fusions, give or take. Sometimes there's bigger dilemmas and sometimes it goes a little bit shorter. But that said, it's been a week from now, so we can expect a fusion announcement here very, very soon if there already hasn't been one. I'm gonna be honest, I got up and I needed to work, so I haven't been able to check on a lot of the news. So plus this video will probably come out in a day later. So there might actually be an announcement before now. But if there isn't, now you know that's about how much time you have to prep for the next fusion coming up. Also, we know that there is a trend. It's not perfect, it's not 100% consistent, but we know that generally they'll go traditional, hybrid, fragment, okay? This most recent one was a fragment, which means we can most likely assume that the next fusion is going to be traditional. Now, whenever you're watching this, even if this is in the future, none of the current fusions that I'm talking about are going on, you can do the same thing. Again, it's not perfectly consistent. You can see sometimes between some of these other fusions, they actually skipped like the traditional here, they skipped a hybrid here. It's not 100% accurate, so we may actually be hit with another hybrid here this next fusion. But knowing this information, I can start to prep for a traditional fusion, and then even if it does end up being a hybrid, okay, great, I have plenty of resources for whatever hybrid fusion comes up, because traditional actually tends to take a bit more, and we'll explain that here in a moment. But I went through and I found some of the more recent schedules for the traditional fusions that went on, and I found a couple of, things to note. One is, yeah, we have to deal with 3 gear enhancement events, which is pretty typical. I was like, totally, last fusion, I was so upset over it, but it's usually pretty typical. It's just really freaking hard. Another thing that I want to note is that it does change a little bit in regards to which affinities the rares and the epics have. So in some of these traditional fusions, we have all of these rares that are voids, and then the epics are like a different affinity, whether that's force, magic, or spirit. That's what I noticed a lot. But then there's other times where you can get different fusions that have all the rares have the same affinity, and then the epic is the void. And this is important to note because we'll later talk about how many potions we're going to need in order to get all of these guys ascended in order to do the fusion. So it's really important to note that so that we can get an idea of how many potions we're probably going to get for the general affinities, but then also for the voids. To me personally, I feel like it's a lot easier when the traditional fusions are like this, where the rares are all voids and then the epics are different affinities. And the reason why is because I tend to have a whole lot of void potions in my account, especially in the beginning. I mean, actually in general, even on my main account, I have a lot of void stuffs. It's the reason why is because we don't get as many void champions to work with, especially in the beginning, right? So we tend to be able to rack up our void, same with our little XP brewskis up here. We tend to have quite a bit more of the void materials and the void resources than we do for the other affinities. Again, good to note because it's not always that the rares are the voids. Sometimes it's the epics that are the voids. And again, it's good to know so that we can have a good idea of how many potions we need for that, and then also how many brewskis if we want to be able to save on energy. XP brews, sorry, I call them brewskis just for kicks and giggles. We are about to transition into how many resources we're going to need so that I can blankly label it out for you, and I'll even have some spreadsheets and fun stuffs for you there. But I also wanted to note that if you are trying to look for, past fusions and what they did, I actually definitely recommend to go to HellHades website. We like HellHades here. I'm sure a lot of people do because this website is freaking perfect. It's amazing. He did great. His whole team did awesome. I'll put it in the description below, but you go to hellhades.com and they have an actual page where they list all of the past fusions. And what I love about this is if we think that a traditional fusion is coming up, we can go into the different traditional fusions, like the most recent one was Fabian, and we can actually look at all the different guides. So this is what I like to do sometimes, especially when I'm doing a free-to-play account that's newer and I'm trying really hard to figure out what I'm going to do and what I need to plan. I'll go through and I'll find the past fusions that are going to be the same as the next one or could potentially be the same as the last one. And it's easy to go through and look at, okay, this is how many resources were needed for this specific fusion. HellHades website is really freaking great about laying it all out. They even have calculators on here. They have the schedules. Go through, think about what fusion might be coming up, or if it's been announced, they'll tell you if it's a fragment hybrid or a traditional fusion. and then you can go to HellHades website, look at the past fusions that were on that category, that type of fusion, and you get an idea of what you're going to need. And also, like I mentioned, he does a great job, their team does a great job of laying out how many resources you're generally going to need for each of the different events, including how many potions, yada, yada, yada. Okay, speaking of potions, and speaking of, you know, keeping all of this very, very clean and straightforward, let's talk about the resources we will need. So if this is a traditional fusion, we are going to need a lot of potions. Because we have to ascend all the different champions to use them. I want to note real quick, this is not a sheet that I made. This is from Cold Brew Gaming. I don't know how long ago this was made, but it's still relevant and super helpful. I was testing it out the other day to see if it still works. Definitely does. Again, I didn't make this, giving full credit where credit's due. It's from Cold Brew and it's fantastic. So here's what you're going to do when the fusion is announced or beforehand so that you can start to prep now, is you want to go in and put in how many champions are going to potentially be needed for the upcoming fusion. Again, that's why I like to look at the past fusions and all of their different setups and schedules, because you can kind of see an idea of what we're going to have to work with. So let's take this Fabian fusion, for example. He needed 16 rares that were magic affinity and 4 epics that were void. So what we can do now is go into this cute little spreadsheet. I freaking love spreadsheets. It's ridiculous. We have 16 magic champions that are rares that you're going to need, and then 4 voids. And what it automatically does is it inserts how many different potions you're going to need for that fusion. I also want to note that it's the same no matter what affinity is needed for the rares and epics. What you could do is start to prep for the upcoming fusion, even if you don't know if it's traditional or if it's going to have which affinity the rares are going to be. You can still go through and make sure you have a minimum of 160 of the lesser ones, 64 of the, you know, you get what I'm saying? Make sure you have at least that much. I'm telling you right now, I have lost a fusion towards the very end, one of the very last events of a fusion on a new free-to-play account in the past. I lost it because of the potions, and there was no way for me to save it. I couldn't open up the potions keep because I was out of gems. It was so bad. So sometimes having a little bit of a cushion to make sure you're prepped now can be freaking helpful. I'm just putting that out there. So here's a great calculator. I'm going to link to it also in the description so that you can go and use it. Cold Brew, good crap, dude. This was great. I love this little calculator here. It's really, really fantastic. It even has a level farming section right here so that you can get a good idea of how much energy you potentially have to use, because you have to level up all the different champions to be able to fuse the overall fusion champ. Okay, let's talk about another resource that is really, really important. It gets talked about a lot for a good reason, because it's very much a big deal and something we need to save for, which is the shard pulling events. That's a summon rush event, and then there's also going to be a champion chase event, which I will go over here in a second. Let's start with the summon rush. So summon rush is very straightforward. You get an amount of points based off of which type of shard that you pull, right? So I have my own little calculator, nice, easy, simple, straightforward. What I usually do before a summon rush event is I will go and see obviously how many points are needed, but then I will also go in and see how many shards that I have currently. So I've got 41, 2, 0, and 1. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. So what I'll usually go in is I'll put in how many shards that I have, and then I'll also go in and see how many points are needed for the upcoming summon rush event. I do want to note that it says fragments in there right now on my sheet, but in other traditional fusion events, usually with a summon rush, what they do is they'll offer you an opportunity to get the first rare and then an opportunity to maybe get an epic as well. So let's go ahead and replace that. So we'll just say for the epic champ and for the rare. Okay, and then we'll just keep the points the same. It's obviously, it changes fusion to fusion, summon rush event to summon rush event, but let's keep these in for a good example. The best way to get our points is through sacreds, because they're each generally worth 500 points. That hasn't changed in a while, which means that I would need 4. I would need 4 sacreds in order to get to 2,000 points, and then of course I could just pull 50 mystery shards and call it good. However, if I wanted to go for the epic, it's a little bit different of a story, right? I'm going to need, what, 6 plus some change, so then I can either pull 200 mysteries, which I have, or I could maybe go through and do some ancients, primals, or voids. Probably voids because they're worth a bit more points. But you can see right now I can get an idea. I'm putting this in to get an idea of how many shards I'm going to need for the upcoming fusion. If it's a traditional fusion, I want probably to go for an epic if possible, but bare minimum for a rare, I'm going to want at least 4 sacreds. Okay, just so that I can make sure I get at least the rare. But usually I try really hard to go after the epics in these situations, if I can, if I have the shards for it, because it's a saving grace. Especially because if you think about it, 1 epic is 4 rares, which means you could potentially skip 4 different, events depending on how it's all set up. So this gives you an idea of how many shards you're going to potentially need in order to do the summon rush event. Let's go over the champion chase event. Now I have a video that I did recently where I completely broke this down, so you can go watch that there. What I did in the last fusion in order to try to get through this champion chase simpler, more easily, I should say, so that I can get through it more easily, is I went through and I farmed up a bunch of champions that I could then go in and fuse. So you get points in a champion chase fusion wherever you get a champion. So that can be if I'm running up campaign and I get, you can get champions from campaign, that counts for points, or you can go through the campaign and farm out a bunch of these other champions and then, build them out and you can fuse these champions. Those are worth points as well. I went through and I was able to get quite a bit of points. This ended up being like 1,500 points, I believe, was how many points I was able to get in the last champion chase. And the reason why is because I messed up and I wasn't able to fuse these two yet because I hadn't bought them from my bazaar. You can only get the Huntress and the Bloodhorn once in the bazaar. Otherwise, you have to pull them from Void Shards. You'll notice I haven't pulled them yet. And the reason why is because I will be waiting until the next champion chase event where I can then pull them and gain some points. And they are worth a decent amount of points. I believe they're, 50 each. That's 100 points right off the bat. In the last fusion, again, this says fragments because of the last fusion, but the last fusion we needed 1,300 points for the first 5 fragments. Pretty sure you're only going to need to worry about going for that epic during the summon rush. So during the champion chase event for a traditional fusion, we actually wouldn't even have to worry about this at all. So we would just worry about how many points this is. And again, what I usually do if we don't have an announcement of the schedule yet for the upcoming fusion, what I'll usually do is I'll go into the past events on HellHades website and I'll go and find the actual points were needed for that one. It looked like they needed 3,000 points in order to get the first rare. See how the points are very, very different from a fragment event? This one, you could get 5 fragments for way less, 1,300 points. One thing I like to do is every single day on this free-to-play account, not on my main account, on the free-to-play account, what I usually do, every single day we have a campaign quest that you have to do 7 times or 3 times against a boss. During those times, I'm either farming up champions for faction wars so that I can try to get further and get more and more points for faction wars, or I'm going into campaign and I'm farming up the different champions that are needed for those fusions and building them out. You can also do it during a champion training event, especially during the fusion. That's what I did last fusion, is during the champion training event, I was going through and I was building these guys out so that I can prep and get ready for the champion chase. But I also want to note that it really just depends on where your account is, right? If you're looking to get a 6-star champion and you need to farm up champions to build out food for your next 6-star champion, and it's going to make a big difference for your account to get your next 6-star, obviously you want to be spending your quests and champion training events doing that. This is just a strategy to do if you're able to. Again, totally just depends on where your account is. And again, for me, I'm trying to offset a champion chase event in the future so that I don't have to worry about having as many shards, which, as you may or may not know, in the beginning of Raid Shadow Legends, it's freaking hard to get a lot of these, especially the higher tier ones like Sacreds and Voids and Primals. Oh my gosh, Primals. Rarely have those. Depends on where your account is, which strategy works best for you. I'm not saying this strategy is the one size fits all and you have to do this in order to be successful in this game. I'm simply sharing that if you find that champion chase tournaments are actually a little difficult for you, then in that case, doing something like this where you plan out ahead and prep in this way can actually be very beneficial for you if you're going after a fusion. If you're not, then, hats off to you. You probably don't even have to worry about this at all. The last 2 big resources that you really need to worry about is one, this one's pretty simple, but gems. Generally, I like to try to have 1,000 to 2,000 gems minimum when I'm going into a fusion so that I can utilize those for whatever I need. And there's multiple different ways that gems can actually save. They can make or break a fusion, because sometimes I can go in and I can get as much energy as needed to finish up a champion training, a dungeon divers, what say you. If you really needed to, you could go in and buy some silver. It's not super cost friendly, but it's there. And also you can go in and buy some shards so that if there is a summon rush event or a champion chase that you're just short on, gems can save a fusion for you. Oh my gosh, you can actually use gems to buy it. Oh my goodness. I didn't know that. That's funny. Okay, so yes, gems can actually save a fusion. And there's been quite a few times where it did for me. Gems can help in multiple different ways. So I like to have 1,000 to 2,000. Really 2,000 is like mindset minimum, but this is a brand new account that's really hard to save up to. And we used a bunch in the last fusion. And then silver. Silver. I actually had to skip the last gear enhancement event in the previous fusion. There were 3. I was able to do the first 2. The second one, I struggled. The third, I had to skip. I had to figure out a way to skip it because there was no way I was going to be able to do it. So let's talk silver. A couple of things about silver. I'm going to do a whole other video about this because there was a couple of comments that I really want to highlight because they made really good points. But let's talk about how much you need as a newer free-to-play player account. So if there are 3 gear enhancement events, which there are for each of these fusions, you'll need about 60 million silver. I actually noted over here that I spent 22 million silver on the first one. I spent 18 on the second one. The third one I skipped. Generally speaking, you're going to want about 60 million silver. Now, obviously, you don't have to go into it having that. Not right off the bat. You're like, okay, well, I mean, if you look at my account right now, I would be failing. Straight up. However, you have to remember that you are going to gain silver over time through doing the events. Some of the events during the fusion will offer up silver. Not to mention, there's a lot of different places that you can go and buy silver. And also, as you do the other events like Dungeon Divers, Dragon, Spider, you'll go through, get some artifacts. You're not going to keep all those things. You got to sell some of them. You're going to gain silver too. And there's also a CVC coming up, which you can go through and get the forge. You get the point. There's lots of different ways to get silver. I'm not trying to make it sound as easy as it really isn't, because I had to skip a gear enhancement event in the last fusion for a good reason. There's other strategies strategies you could use to kind of offset the silver cost for the gear enhancement events. There's tons of videos. I've done quite a few of them if you'd like to go back and watch them. But 60 million silver, kind of what you need. Kind of what you need unless you're able to skip a gear enhancement event. And also, it doesn't always have to be a full 20 million that you use per event. As I mentioned, in one of them I only used 18. So this is just a guesstimate. It's just an idea of how much you potentially need to save so that you have an idea going into it. If you're watching this soon after it's been published, most likely we should have a traditional fusion coming up next. But again, it's not 100% set in stone. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing freaking rest of your day. Keep killing it, and I'll see ya.